and they get pulled into one war after another. I saw it. I saw it in the buildup to the war in Iraq. There was not a shred of evidence, legitimate evidence, after 9/11. We all know this, that Iraq had anything to do with 9/11, with Al-Qaeda's role in 9/11. Iraq had nothing to do with the weapons of mass destruction, and yet all that was told to the American people in order to justify a war. And the Congress bought it. People can't say they didn't know.
That's right.
And it wasn't just whether the vote was an issue. There were dozens of votes afterward that kept the spending going. Many of us took the Bush administration to court. I led an effort in that regard, and the court said, look, Congress, you want to stop the war? Don't ask us to do it. You do it. Cut off funding.
Yeah, there we go.
And so for people who want to, we have one of the reasons why our presence here is so important today is that our national political dialogue is not listening to what we're saying. They're not hearing it. It's not resonating.
Nope.
We had a Democratic primary, and this should have been a major issue in the primary, and it wasn't. Let's get real. And because it wasn't a major issue in the primary, it's not a major issue in the general. And we're really voting in the general election on phantasms. We're voting on mythologies. We're not voting on records. We're not voting on demonstrated commitments to either peace or war. It's all like caricatures. We have to start reclaiming our country by reclaiming a political dialogue that is rooted in reality and not in mythology. And it has to be rooted in the ability to break out of the two-party system right now, which is taking America to hell in a handbasket. I stopped going to meetings of the Democratic caucus. I called it the Democratic carcass. Years before I left Congress, because all they talked about was how bad the Republicans are at polling and raising money. Now, I talked to friends of mine in the Republican Party who said that what they generally talk about in the Republican conference is how bad the Democrats are polling and raising money. That's the difference between the two-party system. But we're not hearing a discussion about how we can achieve true national security. And yes, it is about asking for accountability. Accountability for those who have sent us into wars based on lies. They need to be accountable. Dave Swanson and I worked for several weeks on an impeachment resolution of George Bush that I delivered for almost 5 hours on the floor of the House of Representatives, thanks to strong kidneys. And Dave, as most people are aware, that I only read about half of them that we had come up with in terms of indictment counts. There were at least another 50 that we could have brought forward. But the same beast that has to be tamed is still inside our government. It's not that George Bush has left everything changed.
Bigger.
We hoped it would, but it hasn't. So, as I would see these discussions inside the party and see people tending to go to war, one of the things that occurred to me back in 2001, that our government's policies have helped to create some cultural problems too. Our commitment to war comes home. Is there anyone who doesn't think that the wars that are going on in the streets of our country are not connected to the wars that we're proliferating around the world? Our African American brothers and sisters have been acknowledged, the history is acknowledged with a museum that is opening this weekend. But where is the acknowledgement by our government of the violence that is being visited upon people of color in our cities at the same time? And I'm not just talking about only police violence. I'm talking about economic violence as well. You know, after the government bailed out the banks, they forgot towns like Cleveland, where banks were selling no-doc and low-doc loans by the thousands into communities of color, and crushing people's aspirations by calling those loans later, knowing full well they were actually tricking people into signing on the dotted line so that they could collateralize these debt obligations and build a windfall on Wall Street. There's massive civil rights violations that are continuing.